Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inking Out Loud. For episode 49, we're soldiering on through Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time to pick up today with book 8, The Path of Daggers. I'm your host, as always, Rob Santos, and again, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody?
And now, I'm just passing off to you, Drew, so you can give us a brief overview of what's happened and where we stopped for this read. Take her away, dude.
Yeah, so we really read about 2/3 of Path of Daggers for this particular episode. We had a little bit of extra time over the Christmas break, so we thought we'd take advantage of that. And we read the first 19 chapters, which ends with The Law, is what it's called, chapter 19. But we start up with, an interesting prologue with the Borderlander rulers heading south for purposes, obscure purposes around Rand. And it moves from there to Varen, one of my favorite scenes in in this book, where we see Varen kind of operating a little underhandedly and how she's sort of cobbled together this compulsion weave, and she's using it to manipulate the captured Tower Aes Sedai after Dumai's Wells. And then from there, we have a very brief scene with Moradin and the Shara board, which is kind of a metaphor for the series and what's happening. And of course, Moradin discusses how he relates the game to what is actually happening in the world. But we move into the proper story after that. We start off in Ebu Dar with the Wonder Girls. They travel north to the Kin's farm, use the Bowl of the Winds. The Shanshan invade, and they escape narrowly after Elaine tries to unweave a gateway and accidentally sets it off like a nuke. From there, we move to Perrin, where he is now in Gialdan. He's been sent by Rand to find Massima, the Prophet of the Dragon, and kind of rein him in. Early on here, Perrin inadvertently saves Morghese and Talonvor and Basil Gill and Sebin Balwer, sort of this group that escaped Amador in the last book, and then meets up with Queen Aliandre, who swears fealty to him, and they decide kind of on a course of action, Fail and Berelain and Aliandre, and move forward. And then we go to Rand, very briefly, where he's dealing with the aftermath of the invasion of Ilion. He's kind of gathering up the remnants of Samael's ragtag army, gets them under his wing, and then there is a letter delivered by Torval from the Black Tower with sort of just a logistical update, the numbers, recruitment, things like that, how the building of the Black Tower is going. And then Rand sends Narishma off on a special task. And then we go straight to Egwene, which is where we spend the rest of this portion, where she is maneuvering and politicking with the Aes Sedai and with the nobles, Pelavar and Luan and, the Andorans, and then with Gareth Brine and Talmanes. And we end with Egwene manipulating the Hall into declaring war on Elida.
Yeah, manipulating them into declaring war. Nice, deft, little subtle move there by Egwene Elvir. I did enjoy that. I'll start off by saying this is probably going to be what I think is our longest style discussion, because I just have so many things I wrote down here. But I also think this is an appropriate time, Drew, for you and I. Maybe I should have given you some advance warning on this, to dive into this idea of the slog and how valid it is. These complaints from a lot of readers, myself included, especially as a younger man, about the pacing of this book and the way not this book in particular, but the series at this point, and how it's expanding so much in scope, but the plot seems to be slowing down in some ways. You want to dive into our get this out of the way? Because I have a few things to say about this, for sure. I do have a lot of things to say afterwards, too. Compliments, things that I have problems with. But I do want to finally talk about the slog, because I've got my thoughts down and I'm ready to present them.
Yeah, go for it. I think this is the perfect time.
Awesome. Okay, good. Glad you agree. So, I'll start off by saying when I was a teenager, and I've been very open about this, I was definitely one of the crowd who considered this point in the series a major slowing of pace, and as a result, super boring for long spans of the narrative. I did say this in earlier episodes. I've since grown up, both as a person and as a reader, though definitely more of the latter than the former. But I've come to appreciate a lot of things about the Wheel of Time that I never had the patience for as a younger man. There are characters now, like Nynaeve and Swan, Cadsuane, as well as a lot of the wise ones, and honestly, sorry Jared, but to a large degree, Perrin as well. I know he's going to like hearing that one. This time around that I genuinely enjoyed reading, where before I used to kind of just slog through, and eventually I started skipping through, and after that completely refusing to bother with on a lot of my first rereads. Did you find this point in the series slower at all, specifically as a younger man?
So, I will say, yeah, I saw it as slower, but I never felt frustrated with it until Crossroads of Twilight.
Really?
And that may be because when I picked the series up, everything up through Winter's Heart had already been published. So Crossroads of Twilight was the first book I had to wait for, and then had to, push my way through and realize, well, there wasn't a whole lot that happened in that.
For me, that was Night of Dreams, and it was.
But even then, with Path of Daggers, I've always enjoyed this book, and Winter's Heart, I always enjoyed that book. There are portions of it that I thought crawled a little bit, but as a whole, as a concrete entity, I never felt like the slog was really present here, because there was enough other fun, exciting things going on in this book. Like, sure, some of these Perrin chapters at the beginning of this can get a little tedious, where, he's running around the camp talking to the Mayeeners, and then talking to the Wise Ones, and then talking to Alliandre, and stuff like that can get a little boring, but at the same time, you're going straight from, like, the Wonder Girls using the Bowl of the Winds, and Elaine inadvertently setting off a 1-power nuke on top of, like, an invading Shanshan, task force. So, like, of course he's gonna pull it back into a little more of the, like, give the readers a breather in the next couple of chapters, because he's not gonna start the book at such a high, breakneck pace and then just keep that going for the whole thing. So, as I said, while there are stretches of like 4 or 5 chapters here where there's a lot of politicking, a lot of maneuvering and conversations where not a whole lot of substance happens, there's enough interspersed throughout it that I never got bored. The only part of this series I would say is like a real slog is not till book 10.
Yeah, I suppose. I wasn't trying to classify this book as a whole part of the slog. I just mean there are parts in here. Like, the slog for me is this nebulous entity that's just, it includes a whole lot of plot lines that go absolutely nowhere. Or if they went somewhere, it wasn't somewhere impactful. So, hold on, I'm opening my notes here again. First off, I actually have a small retort to what you said there. You do say, and you'd make a good point, that a lot of other fun things are happening as the slog is going along, as a lot of these narrative timelines are slowing down. But I honestly think it's the juxtaposition that makes the rest of it feel so slow. I think a lot of these fun things that you say are happening are directly why I felt so exasperated with a lot of the politicking in the Rebel Aes Sedai, and a whole lot of stuff going on with Savannah and Galena. And I think a large reason for this being my frustration with some of these slower parts, is the increasing number of tertiary characters that we're getting, especially some that don't even deserve that title. Because, and brace yourselves here, everyone, I've prepared another list, okay? So check this out. This is going to take me a minute or two.
Ancillary Aes Sedai.
Yeah. Oh, they're all over this, too. We have Ethaniel in the prologue, right? We have Elaine and Nynaeve's chapters, including Merilil, Teslin, Renila, Ispan Shafar, Rihanna, Alice, Care, who is the clan Windfinder. We briefly met Chulainn and Elia, the Shanshan. I think they were Shanshan Marat Torakin. We've got Magdyn. Hello, Morghese. Finally joining Perrin's retinue there. Alliandra's joined there. We fly over to Galena, who's still being tortured by Thirava and Savannah, as well as And I wrote down Rial, Somarin, Mira, Tion, Alaris, Modara, Efalin, Kinwin, Emeris, and Norlia. Guys, I'm not even halfway through my list yet. We got back to Rand, and it took me a while to remember who Rosanna was. She's the new High Lord of Tyr. We've got Grigorin, plus we still have to balance Hopwill, Dashiva, Flynn, and Narishma in our heads, not to mention a brief visit from Torval. We now have Cadsuane in the forefront, and whatever she's planning with Soralia. We have the entire power struggle from Egwene's point of view with Lelaine, Romonda, Shiriam, Swan, and her struggles with Garth Bryn. We then meet Erethel, Pelavar, the Mirandian nobles. And then in chapter 19...
Andoran. Yeah.
Andoran. Oh, I thought they were Mirandian.
No, they're the 4 who meet with them out on the ice are Andoran. Yeah, they're the 4 who, like, were really, really pissed off at Morghese. Because Morghese flogged Elorian and, like, yeah.
Under the compulsion of Gabriel. That's right. Okay, okay, cool. And then for chapter 19, which is the last chapter that we ended on for today's read, I wrote down about 50 other Aes Sedai names, and I decided that, this list was already long enough, so I took them out. My point, though, is that at this point when I was reading the series, I was about 13, maybe 14 years old, and honestly, in fact, like a lot, in fact, I bet a huge portion of the first Wheel of Time readers, or I should say Wheel of Time first readers, are either teenagers or young adults that are just starting to dive into epic fantasy. I mean, this is a lot to take in. And, I mean, this list that I just gave you is already longer than a lot of other entire epic fantasy series that I could mention. And many, if not most of these names that I just gave are new faces just from books 7 and 8. I mean, we have had them mentioned earlier, but we don't meet them until books 7 and 8. I mean, a couple of the sea folk we've also met briefly before, but for the rest, this is books 6, 7, and 8 for a large part, where I drew most of those names from. So can we really say that referring to this as the slog isn't at least a little valid? Okay, I'm done.
I would, it's like, maybe it's just the use of the word slog. I don't feel like I'm wading through mud, trying to read through this. It's more like, it's just a lot to remember, and perhaps this is just something unique to me or relatively unique to me, where I have been quite honestly blessed with a really good memory, and I never had a problem keeping track of characters in the Wheel of Time. And so maybe for somebody who, like, doesn't read a name and then just remember it, this would be a lot more frustrating to get through.
I don't know. Like, I have like a weird ability with my memory in other ways too. Like, for example, birthdays. I could tell you every goddamn birthday I have ever heard in my life. But a lot of these Wheel of Time characters, especially considering a lot of their names are so similar, I don't know.
Which they're already addressing in the TV show. I don't know if you saw.
What?
Just before Christmas, they announced the casting for Alana and her 2 warders. Okay. And her warders in the books are Ivan and Owain, and they renamed Owain to Maxime because probably, I'm assuming, they don't want people to get mixed up about Owain and Owen, Tom's nephew.
Owen, Tom's nephew. Oh, okay. I would have thought just Elaine, just the way it's pronounced.
Because, this is a similar thing they did in Game of Thrones with their characters named Osha and Asha, and in the show they renamed Asha Greyjoy Yara Greyjoy to avoid that.
See, I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
There's a fair point to be made there, and it is just something particular to me that I never had problems, like, differentiating Ciaran, Searin, and Ciane, for instance. Like, I know who each of those 3 distinct Aes Sedai is.
I only know Ciane, honestly, off the top of my head.
Ciane is the white.
The white, yeah.
Yeah, whom Elida went to. Searin is the brown, who kind of takes over the Black Aja hunting. And then Ciaran Vayu was the gray Amerlin raised after Tamra, who had the, like, red sitter. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, so now that I've had my bitching about the slog, or at least my justification for using that term, the slog, I've gotten that out of the way now. I do have more style points to discuss, some good, some bad. Unless, sorry, I want to make sure you're done getting your thoughts out of the way on that.
Well, for this book in particular, when you talked about how your kind of rebuttal where you're like, these awesome scenes make it like more glaring when it's like the boring conversations.
But yeah, it's just the juxtaposition, really.
And yeah, maybe there's a little bit of truth to that, but I also find some of the conversations very enjoyable, very stimulating. So for instance, in this section we just read where Galena buckles under, and swears to Savannah, I found that scene very engaging. Like the scenes with Moradin and Shaidar Haran and Graendal and Moghedien.
Oh, I love those.
Love those scenes. Yeah, and so even when there aren't these big bombastic action scenes, there's fun, good conversation in the middle of some of the more mundane conversation, and that makes it less of this like peaks and valleys thing for me, with like jarring changes of pace, and more just like it eases the flow of the story.
Yeah. It gives you different things to focus on. It zooms in, zooms out, perhaps. I mean, I do understand and acknowledge that I'm part of a minority here. That, a lot of people do have the patience. They start this book series old enough, wise enough, well-read enough.
I don't know if you're in a minority. I don't know if you are. There are a lot of people who complain about these.
Modest, I suppose. But it's you're right. There are a lot of people that complain about this. But, a lot of people start this series at the age that we did, and I think that in large part kind of contributes to it, because as a teenager I was, I wanted Rand. I want more Rand, I want more Matt, I want more Rand. Like that's all I wanted. I didn't have the patience for this kind of thing. But since you were just talking about, Galena and Savannah and everything happening there, I'm actually just going to get my point about Savannah out of the way here, because this actually ties in nicely to what you were just saying, I think, in our whole discussion about this slog, if you want to call it that. I just wanted to say that this timeline is one that I am probably hoping the most is excised completely from the Wheel of Time show. Like this narrative arc with Galena, with Savannah, with Theriva, this entire mess with the Shaido and their recovery after the Battle of Demise Wells. I don't care about anyone in this plot line, nor do I even care about what they're doing, and that's the big distinction here. Like, all I know is that these bitches are eventually going to lead to the stalling of Perrin's entire narrative for 3 books to come, right? Even during these chapters or single scenes where we see the meetings, as you just said, between the Forsaken. I mean, I clearly don't care about them or Shaidar Haran, but the threat they represent is interesting, as well as all these little nuggets of gold that we get about the One Power, about the Age of Legends.
Yep.
It makes these scenes, despite the fact that I don't care, or I'm not empathetic, I should say, about any of these characters, it still makes these scenes fascinating to me. Not so with Savannah or Galena's viewpoints. Like, there's nobody here in these scenes that is a threat to our main characters. Nobody here is interesting in their own right. Not only are they all powerless in the grand scheme of things, but they're also painfully ignorant about everything. I'm trying for the life of me. I just can't find anything redeeming at all about these brief scenes with the Shaido. Because it only seems to serve as a reminder that, yep, Savannah's still causing trouble. Yep, Galena's still paying for her crimes. Oh yeah, the Shaido, they're still wandering around and just causing headaches for everyone. No real impact to come. I'm so over it, and what really gets me is that I've read the rest of the series, and I know we've just barely started.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, those are valid points. Those are definitely valid points to make. I don't see it quite the same way as you do, but
sure.
I don't wholly disagree with you.
That's why we have discussion.
Bringing it back to the show idea, I really do think they could completely cut the whole Shaido Fail capture plotline and have very little impact on the main thrust of the story.
It's true. So. That just leads to another question: what do they do with Perrin for 3 seasons then?
I don't know if they have to.
Yeah,
just maybe expand something with the White Cloaks, but I think a lot of things are going to be trimmed down. So
yeah, I should hope.
But outside of the slog, what other style things did you have?
So let's see here. I wanted to ask you about our opening scene and the fact that we finally got our first big in-depth look at what the Borderlanders have been up to. A lot of answers here we finally had. We've got more questions now, but we get to see that despite their like suspicious kind of absence from the last few books as a whole, obviously we've had individuals, they haven't really been sitting on their asses. So I wanted to ask you, how did you feel about that opening scene with Ethaniel?
I love it.
You love it.
I think this is one of the best like prologues in the whole series. For one thing, it's very brief. He doesn't get totally lost in catching us up on all of these minor happenings around the world. He focuses on two important ones, and then gives us like two and a half pages with Moradin. But Atheniel in particular, I love the ceremony. I love the formality of the Borderlanders, and this like strained familiarity where they, Atheniel talks about how much intermarrying there is, where she's got like her like second daughter's married to King Paeter's favorite grandson, and and all this stuff, and yet even though there's this familial connection, there's still so much distrust and there's so much tension among them until they reach the point where they're like, look, this is what we have to do. And then, of course, at the end of that scene, we get Tenobia, who is endlessly entertaining. I would not get along with her in person, I'm sure, but she's fun to read about because she's so ridiculous. And I always appreciate, seeing, like, Agelmar again. This is the first time we've seen Agelmar since The Great Hunt. And he was always a boss, so...
Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah. I like the scene as well. I was, I'll keep hammering this point. As a teenager, I didn't care for it. But
Really?
Now that I've grown enough as a reader, well, put some context here. At this point, like I said earlier, I was about 13, 14. The biggest series I'd finished at this point was Harry Potter. No, Harry Potter wasn't even done yet.
No, it wasn't, yeah.
No. Like, Harry Potter was the biggest, most ambitious thing I'd ever read at this point. So, 8 books into the Wheel of Time, and we're still meeting this many new characters, just regardless as to their station or their rank or what kind of influence they have in this world. I was already over it. But at this point, of course, now, having read as many books as I have, having finished the Wheel of Time, being able to appreciate it as a whole, I'm finding a lot more depth to every single one of these. Not every one of these. I still have a few that I don't like. But more and more of these characters that I didn't care for before. Ethaniel and the Borderlanders, especially the Borderlanding, just royal families. I do find them a little more engaging this time around.
Yeah.
So that scene was enjoyable this time around, and the last few times since I had appropriate appreciation for it.
Uh-huh. So I have one style note that I wanted to bring up, and I think this is a good time to transition into that, and that is on the subject of like this huge cast of characters, the expansive world building, and the incessant progression of our secondary and tertiary cast. And that is how, like you just brought up, we're 8 books in, and the cast is still growing. And it's like, okay, yeah, like it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot to keep in your head. But it's done in such a way and over such a long span that Robert Jordan handles it well. Like it's fairly easy, if you're at least used to this sort of thing, or you're ready for this sort of thing. It's a fairly easy learning curve, where he doesn't throw you into the eye of the world where you need to know all of these Aes Sedai in book 1 or book 2 or book 3. You don't meet them and they don't become players until book 8. Something like that. So it's the gradual expansion of the world building that I appreciate a lot. And I wanted to draw a contrast to my least favorite book of 2019, and that was Ruin of Kings, which has aspirations to this same type of expansive world building and crazy big cast of characters, but it just throws you directly into the deep end of all of these names, and you just don't care about any of them because you don't know any of them. And you're still trying to get your handle with the main characters, with the protagonists, and you're like, if I don't really care about my main character yet, why am I going to care about these other 20 nobles or like slave owners or ship captains or whatever? Like, and so it's the way Robert Jordan built his kind of forward momentum with the world building and the characters in this that makes it more accessible, even though ultimately it is extremely daunting. Like, you know, when you see people talk about online, like, oh, I'm starting the Wheel of Time, I've heard it's really hard to get into, or I've heard it's huge, I'm a little intimidated, and somebody's like, oh yeah, there are 2,782 named characters, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous, I'm never going to be able to handle that. But it's like, no, you don't have to deal with 2,782 named characters from page 1. You deal with like 5. You know?
Yeah, book 2 adds like 25, book 3 adds like 50, and it goes up exponentially. By the time you get to book 8, it's adding like 250 names. It's like, holy crap.
But so you can get used to how Robert Jordan works and how he introduces characters, and you can sort of cheat a little bit where he's established these conventions and predictability in personalities, where with things like the Oddjaws, you're meeting like some Greens, you can expect them to have a certain type of personality, and he doesn't need to spend a whole lot of time describing what Morel is like, because you already know what Greens are like before that. Or you don't need to spend 5 pages talking about Ramonda's personality as a healer, because you know what yellows are. You can spend the time on what's important about Ramonda, which is like her ambition, you know. And so it's just, I think this is a really good example of how to properly build a huge series. You do it gradually, you do it smoothly, and you give your readers a chance to get dug in before you throw all of this ridiculousness at them. Because otherwise, it's just going to turn them off.
Yeah, and that as I've said repeatedly, was definitely a case when I was a younger guy. I love how we're almost half an hour into the episode. We're still on our style discussion, and I'm not even done my style discussion here. But all of my points from here on out are just very brief.
Okay.
I wanted to say we have some more of the creep factor right out of the gate. You know, making sure that we understand the darker tone that this book is going to take, which, you know, it's not a huge surprise seeing the last couple novels and how they've gone. But that image there that I have of the Golem watching the party leave the city of Abu Dar, spotted as just this little figure atop the spire, clearly gazing down at them.
Yep.
Ugh, so creepy. And we have another scene, of course, very briefly, with the Golem finding a nice warm meal, right?
Yep.
We get Moradin.
Yep.
Yeah. Moradin watching the party from afar. He's clearly on to what they're doing and what they're about to do, and he's furious and trying to stop them. I thought that was pretty cool. But I also wanted to give another nod to Jordan and just the way that he is so blasé at this point with these incredible similes that he keeps adding. You know, after the Bowl of the Winds is finally used, Nynaeve has this epic metaphor where she says, I feel like a kitchen sieve that's just had the whole mill poured through it.
Yep.
That's one right there that, like, obviously not spoiling anything, but David from the Reckoners would just be like, that's a really good one, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, are you completely done your style? Because I have a couple more, but I don't want to just...
I am done on style things.
Cool, okay. More dramatic irony. We have more gays. Like I said, hello. You know, finally joining Perrin's retinue. And let's see here. And to balance that huge rant that I went on earlier, I'll end my style discussion with another compliment. And I want to say I still love this Aiel humor. I love it so much. Gaul, my man. Sulin, are Chiad and Bane about? I saw them hunting yesterday, and I figured I might show them how to draw a bow before one of them shoots herself in the foot.
Yeah.
Danzinger. Then we get Sulin with the smirk in return. She's just like, I'm surprised to see you come back today. They went out to set snares for rabbits. You know, smattering of applause, appreciation. Oh, damn, Sulin, that was nicely returned. But my man Gaul, he just shrugs it off with an eye roll. He's thinking, in that case, I better go cut them loose.
Yeah.
Boom! Fatality. I loved it. It was just, it was so good. It's so good. And that wraps up my style discussion. So.
Okay.
Character.
Let's start with Elaine.
Elaine? Oh, the one that I actually didn't write anything down for.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't write down anything for Elaine in this part.
Because there are 2, I think, important character moments for her in this. and one of them is sort of an ancillary, nice little tidbit dropped in. One of them is her research into the Terangreal, into the cache they have collected from Ebudar. And she starts getting, some descriptions, she finds 3 Angreal in there, and she starts going through and giving, like, impressions about some of them, including the, I'll leave that for next episode, actually.
Yeah? Okay.
The Red Rod Terangreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, she finds the Paralis net set, the gaudy jewelry, and she finds, like, the Talisman of Growing and the Robert Jordan cameo, like, ebook library Terangreal and things like that. And she has this conversation while she's researching them with Van Dien, I think it was. And she warns Elaine, she's like, this isn't very smart, what you're doing. You could burn yourself out or kill yourself or kill us. And Elaine's like, I'm being careful, I know what I'm doing. And she's like, Martine Janata knew what she was doing too. And we found her burned out on the floor of her bedroom, and she had no idea what happened. She didn't remember anything from the past week, and didn't know what Terangreal she was studying, and, like, all of this stuff. And so this is, I think, the first sign of the overweening recklessness Elaine is going to be demonstrating in the next couple of books, where she has an impetuous tendency to just do something because she's supremely confident in herself, whether that confidence is justified or not. We're going to see this happen in Winter's Heart. We're going to see it happen in Knife of Dreams. We're going to see it happen in Towers of Midnight. Like, there's all this stuff that she does that she basically gets lucky in, and that she doesn't think through. And this is the first time that we see one of these, like, really kind of higher stakes instances of it. She's not as ridiculous in the earlier books as she's going to get from here till the end of the series. I have one more thing to talk about with Elaine.
Oh, actually, sorry, I totally forgot something I thought of while you were talking about that. I just need you to back up really quick, about 2 minutes there.
Okay.
What was this you said about a Robert Jordan cameo with the ebook Terangreal that's got all these books in it? That's a Robert Jordan cameo?
Yes.
Holy crap, I had no idea.
Oh, maybe I should have saved that for the lore segment at the end. Although our lore segment's going to get a little off the rails as it is, so...
What, in this episode specifically, or you mean just going forward?
In this episode specifically.
Whoa, nice. Okay. Should I just jump onto 9? Oh, sorry, you said you had one more about Elaine.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
so I think I found the description of it where they're going through blah 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 blah. Odd piece of jewelry. Oh my gosh, where is it? So there's the seated woman with her, like, the long hair. Oh my gosh, where's the description of it?
I remember seeing this Terangreal and thinking, oh my god, they had, like, memory back then. They had ebooks back then, or storage with text. I was like, holy crap, that's cool. No part of me stopped to actually look at the description of the figure.
Yeah, so it's described here, and then it's described again in Knife of Dreams when Avienda, like, reads it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a bearded man smiling, holding a book. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and Robert Jordan did say that was, like, his self-insert in the book.
Cool. Nice and subtle, too. Very modest about it. I like that.
Yeah.
Are we wrapped on Elaine?
No. Okay, so...
oh, sorry, yeah, that's right. You were just confirming.
The other thing is the unweaving and the gateways.
Yeah.
So this is perhaps, another tie-in to her impetuosity, if you will, but how her luck is really running strong here, and even though she's super not prepared to do what she tries to do, and it could have ended much, much worse, it ended up being, like, kind of a big deal. she ends up, throwing a huge wrench in the Shanshan invasion plans with this, and on top of that, she makes them extremely paranoid, and they might have caused a lot more trouble in the next couple of books were they more confident in, in their ability to move forward with things, like if they thought they could just attack the Aes Sedai and not have any issue with it, but instead they're all like really paranoid about
this weapon that they have.
Yeah, this like super weapon, and they're like, oh boy, they're way more dangerous than we thought, and all of that. And so Elaine, I do think, learns a little bit of a lesson from that gateway, where she has the same kind of like learning hunger in a lot of ways as Egwene does.
Yeah.
But I think that's tempered a little bit by, she's like, okay, just because Aviendha can do it, and just because I can learn how to do it, doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be good at it. And from now on, when it comes to things like that, she tends to stick more toward the things she already knows she has a talent for, instead of trying to go do crazy new stuff.
Yeah.
So, but that's the last thing I wanted to talk about with Elaine. Other than that, like, some of the bickering that goes on during the ride with, like, the sea folk and the kin. It's just like, ugh.
Oh, the kin. I forgot to list... Oh, I mean, I did list some of the kin, but yeah. So, are you fine with moving on to Nynaeve? Nynaeve? Why did I say it like that? Nynaeve.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't have much to say about Nynaeve here.
I've only got a couple of brief points.
Okay.
I did write down, when the Shanshan strike on Abu Dar, it's Nynaeve that wants to go back for Matt. She is terrified for him. And despite how much she complains about him, or maybe because of how much she complains about him, it's all the more endearing in this moment. You can genuinely see that Nynaeve is still the wisdom at heart. She still wants to protect those Emmonsfielders. And I like to imagine this hypothetical scenario, bear with me here, where it's fun to think about, where Nynaeve actually does end up going back for Matt, and she shows up where Matt is locked away in a dingy cell, and she gets to blast the door open and announce that his ass better get stepping, because she's not taking any nonsense and it's time to go. I would love to see that. Just even like a quick animation or something like that. That'd be just so entertaining to do.
An old role reversal.
Or to read. yeah, absolutely. But that right there is pretty much everything I had to say about Nynaeve.
Okay, yeah. Let's
move on to our big hitters.
Let's move to Perrin, because we do have a reasonable chunk of Perrin in this book.
We do, yeah.
Which is funny, because my memory of this book was always that he only had a couple of chapters, but he actually has like 7 or 8 chapters in this book, and there are not that many chapters in the book total. Like, this is the shortest Wheel of Time book. I should have brought that up in that opening segment,
really?
But this is the shortest Wheel of Time book. There are only 31 chapters in it. It's like a little under 675 pages in my mass market paperback. Yeah, it's significantly short. I mean, like, this is like half, I think, or like a little more than half the length of Oathbringer, for instance.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy to consider. Holy crap.
Yeah, but so Perrin getting like 6 or 7 or 8 chapters in this is actually a significant chunk of the book, and maybe this is the reason I have a bit of a different perspective on this is because he doesn't have much of a character arc in this one. It's mostly just groundwork being laid for his eventual like rise to leadership, where we're starting to see him acquiring these different factions now, where he's got, he left Cairhien with a small contingent of Aiel, maidens and wise ones, and then the Berelain and her winged guards. And now, early on here, we see him acquire more gays in her little group with Baller,
unbeknownst to him, though.
Colin Vor, yeah. And then we see him acquire Alliandre and her guards.
That's why I was going to stop you right there and say, what do you mean, like, little ones? Like, what are subtle ones? The beginnings. This is huge. He literally has Berylane, which is, the first of Mayenne, but now he has the Queen of Gildan as his liege lady.
Uh-huh.
I mean, as his vassal? What the hell is the word I'm looking for?
He's her liege lord.
He's her liege lord, yeah. That's huge. That is a big moment for the rise in power of the man who is Perrin Aybara.
Yeah, but so where I was talking about it more is like in Perrin's internal journey, he's not really doing much yet. He's still very much resisting, and in this book especially, he's not even really the one making the decisions. It's not until Fael gets captured that he starts being the driving force behind it, because we see in this, when Alejandre swears, and then she goes off and talks with Fael and Berylane, they're the ones who are plotting and making the plan here. And Perrin's like, oh, I'm just going to go talk to the wise ones and try and smooth over the ruffled feathers. And the wise ones tell him in no uncertain terms to, get off their back. So with Perrin here, it's like there are bigger pieces moving around him in these chapters. And he's not so much the active, he doesn't have much agency here. It's the people around him who have agency. And that's a big change for Perrin, because the previous scenes, like basically everything from Lord of Chaos earlier, whenever we get a Perrin point of view, he's got agency. And now suddenly in Crown of Swords and Path of Daggers, he's losing some agency. And it's like Rand in Crown of Swords is telling Perrin what to do, and Perrin's doing what Rand wants. And then here, Perrin's not making the decisions. It's Fael and Berylane who are making the decisions about how they're going to go about this. And this is, I think, a clever thing that Robert Jordan did, because Perrin's eventual character arc is all about him having ultimate agency, being the leader, and being a unifier, and he starting him off on this new character arc, because really Perrin has a brand new character arc after Doom Eyes Wells. And it is this rise to power, rise to glory, rise to leadership kind of thing. And by starting him off, like rewinding the clock, setting him back at ground zero where he's got no agency, we can see him gradually rise through that arc to where he's the one making all the choices and being a true leader.
Yeah. As far as Perrin goes, I will say Broski's internal dialogue, though, was getting pretty sassy. He was observing some horses at one point. It might have been in Morghase's retinue. I don't quote me on that part, though. But he says to himself, and in his internal dialogue, a finer collection of buck knees, bowhawks, spavins, and swaybacks Perrin could not recall. And I just wrote down, damn, Perrin, he just roasted those horses.
Yeah.
And as an amusing side note, when I tried actually writing that exact quote down, my phone autocorrected literally every single one of those into something else, which should tell you something about the eccentricity of Mr. Jordan's writing style, eh?
Yeah, it is actually kind of funny to bring this back to style talk. While I tend to not think too much of a lot of words that Robert Jordan uses, because my foundational, when I got into adult books, which was fairly early on, which was 3rd, 4th grade, I read a lot of stuff like Robert Louis Stevenson and Alexander Dumas, and they used language like this. And so reading it in Robert Jordan's books, it never stood out to me. But then okay. I see people talking, they're like, what are these words? And I'm like, oh yeah, of course it's this and this. And they're like, no, those are not normal words.
Yeah, the spit dog on the Dragon Reborn, I remember one be like,
oh yeah, when you brought that up.
That one. I was like, what the hell is this thing? You had to tell me what that was. Yeah.
But yeah, because when I was younger, I read stuff like The Black Arrow by Robert Louis Stevenson, and that's like a War of the Roses era England, which this is more or less the same technology and cultural level as in The Wheel of Time. So a lot of that vernacular is the same. And but yeah, that is really funny that your phone was trying to autocorrect everything.
My phone autocorrected every word of every one of those. It took me like a minute and a half to get those 8 words down. It was the most frustrating thing. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But so back to Perrin, and I
Right.
just wanted to end with my last point about him is that while I just went on this whole rant about how he had no agency, he's not the one making the decisions. His sequence of chapters in this part of the book, at least, ends with him making a decision and giving a command to hang the dragon swarm.
Yes.
And this is the first time now where Perrin's like, I'm making this choice. I'm giving this order.
Yeah.
And
I like how he retorted to that one guy. If I could tie that to you, you'd hang from the nearest tree. I was oh, God.
Yeah.
Hardcore Perrin A. Bar right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
My last point about Perrin is how Jordan continues to play. Again, this is a style point. I have so many style points. Wait till we get to Rand. I have a couple more there, too.
Only two chapters?
Yeah. The way that Jordan continues to play with dramatic irony on the part of Morghese in this sequence, particularly where she missed pouring the cup, and then she cursed to herself.
Yeah.
So that only Perrin could hear. And I wrote down, I guess we can see exactly where Elaine gets it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I thought that was very like cushy moment, because it's like, yeah, mother daughter, they are very, very similar. I did enjoy that little bit of irony.
Nice.
That
I like that parallel that you drew there. I like that.
Yeah. Now that wraps up my points about Perrin. I still have Rand and Egwene and Cadsuane to get out of the way. Who should we move on to next?
Well, let's do Cadsuane first.
Okay.
Because she's only in like one chapter, so.
Right, yeah. And me being the big Cadsuane fanboy, I still have almost that many words myself just to say about her.
Okay.
So I should start off by saying most everything I have to say about Cadsuane at this point centers around this conversation and this new scheme that she has with Soralia. Because as a teenager, this scene marked, honestly for me personally, a huge turning point in the series because of how much it gave me to reconsider. Because up until this point, as an ignorant, obnoxious, hormone-ridden teenager, I was totally on board with Rand's whole fatalistic attitude of, I must become hard as rock. No, hard as steel. No, hard as Quain Diar. You know, like every character that challenged him on his fading humanity just really, really, really frustrated me as much as it frustrated Rand. But Cadsuane, and this is why I love this character, she was the first character to explain it in a specific way, making me actually reconsider what I was hoping for. Nobody can deny that Dark Rand is an epic, badass son of a bitch. But I can't really argue... Oh, sorry, and I say that can't really be rivaled in anywhere else in epic fantasy, at least on the level of Rand al'Thor. But when she said to Soralia, Cadsuane, if he goes to Tarmangaden as he is, even his victory may be as dark as his defeat. This is another one of those lines, Drew, where I remember exactly where I was when I read it. I was on the top bunk of the bunk bed my brother and I used to share. Like, I'm telling you, I had a blue rocket blanket, the white tile floor. I could smell the cinnamon spice in the air late that night. I remember this moment when Cadsuane blew my mind. I remember it. But it wasn't until this read-through that I realized the importance of this coalition she has with Soralia. Like, these are apparently, from the way Jordan describes them, the two most formidable women in this entire series, to use their word. Joining together in a common struggle against Rand. But, for the first time, it felt like it might actually be for his own good. To teach the Dragon Reborn laughter and tears. What do you think, dude? Cadsuane?
Yeah, so... this scene is very interesting, and it does give you a different perspective on Cadsuane, because everything she does, or most of the things she does in A Crown of Swords, are pretty straightforward, like Aes Sedai things. You know, she acts towards Rand the way every other Aes Sedai acts towards Rand, where she's like, you're important, so you need to stay alive, but you're going to do things my way, and I'm going to be mysterious about it, and I'm going to just be like, well, of course I'm right, because I'm an Aes Sedai. And then it's in this scene where we see her kind of distance herself from the usual methods of the White Tower, and her willingness to work as equals with Soralia, to kind of come together on equal footing, which is not something we've seen from all these other Aes Sedai interacting with the Wise Ones, where there's a huge power imbalance one way or the other. Either these Aes Sedai are beaten down and are being treated like servants, or the Aes Sedai are haughty and see them as wilders, you know? And so it's Cadsuane recognizing a peer in Soralia and being willing to step outside of her comfort zone to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that.
Especially for somebody with the stature of Cadsuane, somebody with the reputation of Cadsuane, being willing to make that overture and to approach Soralia, not approach Soralia, because I suppose Soralia approached her, but to accept her as an equal, united in a common struggle, that is a huge, huge, huge deal for both of these women. And my last point about Cadsuane, tying back really, really briefly, actually, to Rand, if you'll pay attention, because I just wrapped up my point previously, to teach the Dragon Reborn laughter and tears. If you'll notice, the very, very next scene we get has Rand, and he thinks to himself about how everybody's probably, thinking it might be him behind the drastic change in the weather now, and he's laughing to himself bitterly. I just thought that was a very, very deft narrative move there on Jordan's part. It was pretty cool.
Yes. I like, and how he, there's this like weirdly unsettling scene where like the nobles come into the tent and he's laughing and they're all like, you know, and of course he's not laughing because he's like happy. He's laughing because he's going crazy and Luz Theron has returned.
Yeah.
And, there's
so heebie-jeebies.
Good juxtaposition of like laughter and tears can mean very different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are we done with Cadsuane?
Yes.
Should we move on to Egwene or Rand?
Well, let's stick with Rand since we're already kind of talking about him
cool.
here.
Sweet.
There, like I said, there are only a couple of chapters with Rand in this, but it's getting hard to read. Like he's so unstable mentally now.
I love reading it though.
Oh yeah, it's like it's hard to read, but it's like really compelling.
Yeah.
But it's kind of combined now with the dreary setting, where the snow is starting to come down and like it's the dirty encampment and the dirty men hiding out in like the bushes and it's a very gritty kind of scene that we're navigating while we're in this really gritty mental landscape of Rand's. And it makes for a pretty grim couple of chapters here. And then, of course, Rand's antagonism surfaces when Torval shows up, and because that guy's a jerk, and Rand doesn't like him to begin with. And then he's got all this news from the Black Tower, and he's being really contentious about it, and being contentious about the Saladar Aes Sedai and their army. And Rand's like, oh no, they're going to Camelin, don't worry about them. And he's like, oh, well, I mean, it just looks like they're going to the Black Tower. He's like, no, if any of you touch that army, I will personally kill you. And, like, and going back to your points about dramatic irony, this entire scene is dramatic irony because Rand is thinking, like, I know what's going on here, Torval doesn't. But really, Rand doesn't know because they're not going to Camelin either.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to Tar Valon.
Yeah.
And so... It just goes to show how kind of fractured Rand's mental state has become, and it's troubling. I mean, it's really troubling.
It's interesting. I actually hadn't considered it that way before. I wrote down here. I said, "Holy crap!" Rand's scene starts so dark and ominously again. Tacking on to your point there, I said Jordan has hit his stride with these Rand intros. This rain matches perfectly as he's waiting for the return of the men that Samael placed, elsewhere in Ilion. And then I went on to write after that, after I had a brief realization, I wrote, how am I just now realizing that Jordan has managed to make so many of these dark and ominous scenes with Rand and, bringing us back into his mindset without using storms or raining anywhere. This entire world has been in a drought for several books now. When I realized that, I was almost intimidated by that implication. It's like getting through an entire poem and then realizing the poet never used the letter E. It's like rain and thunder and lightning, all these atmospheric add-ons, this kind of stormy weather in general. It's a great source of setting a scene, but or just like, you know, instill the tension, you know. But Jordan has literally held this world still for months, years in his part, because he's writing through it, and he still managed to give us all of these incredibly dark and ominous scenes without needing to utilize this whole rain, dark clouds, thunder, lightning kind of setting that we really haven't seen since the Dragon Reborn, I think, when they were in Tyr and they were hunting down Belal. Or was it... No, it was Samael. They were still in Ilion at that point when it was raining and the Dark Hounds attacked.
Well, yeah, and then there's a scene with Matt in Tyr when he's looking for Komar, and Tom gets sick. Yeah.
I mean, we got some rain at the end of the Shadow Rising, but that's not even remotely the same thing. It's Rand causing a miracle to get the attention of the rampaging Aiel at Al-Kirdal. Yeah. So I realized that when I was writing that down, and I went, wow, I have to mention that. I probably should have mentioned that in my style discussion too, but we already had so much to talk about style-wise today that I had to add it to Rain's character.
Yep.
No. Also, he's made his biggest announcement yet. Though he hasn't proclaimed it yet, he tells the Ashaman that he's going to cleanse the taint on Saidin.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, and as an aside, their reactions were kind of chilling, I think, from, you know, Dashiva's nonchalance to, I think it was Hopwill, his eyes just shining with sudden hope, and to think that he already has that much faith in Rand, and not as a person, but as a figure, chilling. And then because of that, badass. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so I just wanted to tack on briefly this group of Ashaman with Rand, right? We have Dashiva, and then, you know, we've got Eben Hopwell and Jahar Narishma and Fedwin Moore and Jonan Adley.
Fedwin Moore, I forgot about Adley. I forgot. Where's Damer Flynn at this point? Is he still in Kyrian?
I believe he's still in Kyrian.
Oh, okay. I mentioned him.
He's doing his thing with Samitsu, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. She's offering to do anything, even bear his children, as long as she shows him, or he shows her what she did to heal Rand. Damn it.
Yeah, no, in fact, he's definitely in Kyrian, because it is right about now that he heals Ergain and the other two Tower sisters of being severed. But there's definitely some big stuff here, and we also get numbers from the Black Tower. We get, I believe it was 29 Ashaman, 122 dedicated, and 297 soldiers.
Yeah, many soldiers. And
but so really the total number is like just shy of 450, and in Taim's note, he said another thing that, like, he said, you know, I found the note here. Yeah, I have the honor to report that 29 Ashaman, 97 dedicated, and 322 soldiers are now enrolled at the Black Tower. And then he said, I now have as many as 50 recruiting parties in the field at any time, with the result that 3 or 4 men are added to the rolls almost every day.
That was the most intimidating stat.
The Black Tower will equal the White, as I said it would. In a year, Tar-Valon will tremble at our numbers. Yeah. And I also like this last little line where he says, I harvested that blackberry bush myself, a small bush and thorny, but a surprising number of berries for the size. And I found that interesting, and I was confused by this when, you know, reading it younger, because he calls it a small bush and thorny. For some reason, I had it in my mind that he was talking about the 2 rivers there. Because we soon see really? 2 Rivers men showing up at the Black Tower.
Okay.
And we know that Taim also personally went to the 2 Rivers. And it's because he calls the Blackberry Bush small. That confused me, because, like, Tar-Valon's the biggest city in Randland.
I thought that would go to Caemlyn.
No. So there's...
By population or landmass? Oh, I guess it doesn't really fucking matter.
Population. Like, Tar-Valon...
First F-bomb this episode.
Tar-Valon is, like 750,000, I think, and Caemlyn's, like, 600,000. Robert Jordan gave a...
It's probably in the companion.
No, it was an interview database quote on Theoryland Or maybe it was the other way around. It was maybe Tarvalon was 600,000 and Camelin was like 300,000. Yeah, no, that's what it was. Because like Tyr, Ilian, and Kyrian are all about 250,000. Camelin's like 300,000, and Tarvalon's like 500,000 or 600,000.
Holy crap!
But yeah, so like that's not a small bush.
That's a huge discrepancy there. Yeah, in size, I mean, not in what. Yeah. Oh, also in what Taib was saying, you're right. That's not a very small bush, but with the context of what was currently being discussed in that note, I had no problem understanding, even as a kid, understanding what he was talking about. I think you were looking too deep there, bud.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, this read, it's very obvious, that it was that he's talking about Tarvalon. I was just confused by the fact that he called it small.
Getting back around to Rand again, though, I'm going to wrap up my Rand points here. There's one thing left I have to say, and it's something I never understood. I want you to explain this to me, Drew, because I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure I'm just kind of overreacting here. But I'm also sure that others have voiced the same concern, too, because I've seen it. But, okay, so we've got Dark Rand, or if you want to call him further darkening Rand at this point. He seems to be rapidly losing his trust in everyone and everything around him, closest friends included in some cases. But, at some point, he decides, you know what I need right now? Collindor. And you know who I should send to get it? I should just try. I mean, I could send travel to Tyr, but channeling is starting to make me nauseous. Better send Jahar fucking Narishma to go fetch it. Good boy. Mm-hmm. What the hell? Yeah, okay, why not let a random bloody Ashaman, likely soon to be insane if not already starting to go insane, just go and take the prophesied weapon of the Lord of the Morning, capable of leveling cities at a single blow. Sounds totally safe, could not possibly go wrong in any way. What do you think?
I mean, I think Rand really, really wanted to trust Jahar. Rand is... Because he's at a point now where he feels so isolated that whether subconsciously or consciously, he is reaching out and trying to find people he can trust.
Okay. Is there not a better way to do that than to risk this kind of... holy crap.
I mean, sure, there is, but keep in mind, Rand is insane.
I guess.
He's clearly not thinking things logically right now.
Remember if we actually read it in this portion of... If it's in this portion of this book. But there's at one point at which Lews Therin whispers to Rand and he says something along the lines of, only the dead trust no one. And I could have sworn it had something to do with Narishma in that... Oh. In that context, but I might have been either it wasn't in this scene or I was half asleep when I was listening to it.
I thought that was earlier.
It could very well have been,
because doesn't he show up like right at the end? Lews Therin wasn't talking to Rand during this segment, and then it was right at the end that he returns and Rand starts laughing and the nobles.
Yeah, I don't know. I seem to for some reason when I think of that line from Lews Therin when he kind of surprises me and the rest of the readers, I assume, when Lews Therin's voice of all people says, "Well, you have to trust somebody." I could for some reason in my head that's linked with Jahar Narishma. Maybe it's later in the series.
No, so when he returns, so it's right after Narishma says, "I won't fail," and then he salutes and leaves, and then dangerous, a voice whispered in Rand's head. Oh yes, very dangerous, maybe too dangerous, but it might work. It might. In any event, you must kill Torval now. You must. Yeah. And then the noblemen come in and find Rand laughing because Lews Therin has returned.
It's just the I mean, Narishma and any of the Ashaman, I think it's quite a dangerous thing to do. But why?
And he's
Narishma?
aware of that.
Why not just go channel and get him himself? This is something that can go so wrong. This could lead to hundreds of thousands or millions of deaths if the slightest thing goes wrong. And Rand's just like, I'll roll these dice.
Yeah, well.
When he could so easily, if he wanted to deal with a little bit of nausea, could so easily have just avoided that entire danger.
Keep in mind, Rand also didn't tell Narishma everything he needed to know.
What do you mean by that?
We'll revisit this in the second half of this book, but
okay.
At least on the surface, Rand did not tell Narishma everything he needed to know about the wards on Calendar.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, so was that intentional or not? I mean, it must have not been intentional since he wanted the sword.
It's a great question, and that's something we'll have to discuss more after we get to that scene later on.
Anyway, I'm done with my points about Rand.
Okay, I am too. Let's go to Egwene.
Yep, that's the last of the character discussion I have here. Is Egwene? I only have 2 points, but they're modest. They're medium size, I should say.
Okay.
Should I just get us started here? Yeah, yep. I guess I'll do. Egwene's chapters are a little surreal to me. I specifically, chose that word, surreal, at this point in the series, because she has achieved the Amaryllis seat, but she really hasn't started to consolidate her power among the rebel Aes Sedai yet. And there are still plenty of moments, I think, where we can cheer for her, particularly in this last chapter, chapter 19, that we read for today's discussion. But overall, the entire power struggle in Salidar is just, or not in Salidar anymore, but the entire power struggle is just boring and sometimes frustrating. And I think a big part of this frustration is in the characters of Lelaine and Ramonda, for me personally.
Yeah.
I really, really, really hate these two, Lelaine and Ramonda. Not as characters, because if I hated them as people, that would have indicated that at least they were written well. I don't think that's the case right here. I really honestly hate how Jordan has represented them. Lelaine and Ramonda, for the vast majority of the scenes we get them in, do not comport themselves like we've been led to believe of Aes Sedai.
They are very catty.
Granted, most of it's in Egwene's presence, in private, and they're trying to beat her down in a submission. I get that. But the sheer pettiness, the temper tantrums, the arrogance, I really wish that Jordan had chosen a more believable pair of rivals for Egwene to tackle. They don't feel like a threat. They feel like a couple of bratty 12-year-olds who are given the shawl for a week and just told, here, do what you like for 1 week. Two thumbs way down for these two. It was satisfying, I'll say, to see Egwene tear them up in chapter 19. But knowing what I do about the future of the series, Lelaine and Ramonda still frustrate me. Or maybe Jordan is starting to frustrate me using Lelaine and Ramonda.
Yeah. So, Egwene in this portion is mostly okay. Although there's one glaring thing that frustrates me, and this is like where it's explicitly spelled out how Egwene is sort of misinterpreting or twisting the idea of Ji-Eto to her own ends. And it's when she's talking with Swan early on, and Swan is like saying that, as soon as possible she'll swear the 3 oaths again. And Egwene says, why? I don't condone lying, Swan. Not normally. It's just that sometimes it really is necessary. Her time with the Aiel flashed through her mind. So long as you're willing to pay for it anyway. So that right there, that is what I have a problem with Egwene's morality. The ends justify the means, as long as you're willing to pay the price afterward. That is what Egwene is operating on. And I cannot deal with that.
I think I kind of come down on her side on that one. Really?
No. No. Absolutely not.
In her case, that doesn't work overall as a moral standard. I would have a problem with that as a moral standard, applied to just any situation. But if you're applying it to one specific situation, like this one, she's
not applying it to one specific situation. She's saying, I don't want you to swear the 3 O's because I want you to be able to lie in the future. Okay, yeah, so sorry about that, everybody. We just had a little technical hiccup. The internet decided to just go away for a few minutes on my end, but we're back up and running. So and we were in the middle of a heated topic on Egwene's morality. But yeah, this is kind of this idea that she espouses here of she says she doesn't want Swan to re-swear the 3 O's because she wants Swan to be able to lie. The most hilarious part is that she's like, I don't condone lying, but I condone lying. And
well, I think you're misinterpreting what she's saying. She's not saying it's always okay to lie as long as the ends justify the means. She's just saying you need to be able to lie for me because there are going to be a few specific scenarios where the ends justify the means. Not as a whole or as a general rule.
I'm sorry that I don't buy that. I do not buy that morality.
But you could apply it to a whole bunch of other things. What if little kids start asking very, very tough questions? You gotta lie to them sometimes,
That's not at all what Egwene and
but
Swan
again,
are talking about.
I'm using it as an example. How you can't use it. She's not saying it's universally.
This is not on the topic of white lies. We're talking about political manipulation and lying for personal gain. This
not
is
exclusively. Probably exclusively in her case.
This is specifically what Egwene thinks about, because she immediately thinks back to her time with the Aiel and how she lied for personal gain. Like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
If she had. Oh.
other than this one scene, like Egwene's scenes are actually kind of entertaining. I enjoy her meeting with the Andorran nobles, and I especially love the meeting of the Hall when they declare war,
Yes.
and like, and just how like out of sorts, like flummoxed all these Aes Sedai are. They're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, oh, and then Moria gets up in the middle of it, and it has this like righteous speech in in support, and and Lelane's like, that's all well and good. We're gonna have a chat about decorum after this, and like,
Yeah.
yeah,
somebody-
and then another very interesting part about this is Talmanes has been hanging around, and
Yeah.
and Elaine chats with him, and I
Elaine.
love this scene. Elaine, sorry, Egwene, my bad.
Got you.
Yeah, she chats with him, and he kind of is straight up with her and says, look, the Band of the Red Hand isn't going to go to Tarvalon. He's like, we have another contract here with
Rodran?
King Roedran, and we're going to help him like kind of get Murundi settled, and I think this is another point, like, this is a very different Talmanes than the one we're going to get in a couple of books here. Like, so
Yeah.
it's fun getting these little scenes with him, and it's also fun getting to see him like interact with different people, because most of the time with Talmanes, obviously he's around Matt. His interactions with our main characters are all with Matt, and then this is the only Robert Jordan penned scene where Talmanes is interacting with a different major character than Matt, and it's fun to see how the same and how different he is. He's more like business with Egwene, but he still has that same kind of dour personality that we see him with Matt, like, in Meerone and during the Battle of Cairhien and things like that. So I liked that dynamic between Egwene and Talmanes in this scene.
You are a big fan of Talmanes, aren't you?
I'm a very big fan of Talmanes.
Okay, a lot of
Robert
things are
Jordan's
starting
Talmanes.
to click into place here with how much you had to complain about with Sanderson's Talmanes. So I didn't realize. Well, that probably stems from the fact that you just were such a big Talmanes fanboy earlier than that. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I will, Drew. You want to reach out through the webcam and choke me after I say this one. I don't like Jordan's Talmanes. I like Brandon's.
Why?
I like Brandon's because he's just.
Why don't you like Jordan's Talmanes?
He's too boring. He's just boring.
Oh, I disagree.
He's like
I disagree.
he's like if a loaf of bread was a human being. It's like there's no substance to it.
Oh, I so disagree.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I knew
man.
you would. There's
Ugh.
nothing about Talmanes really until actually including book 12. He still didn't make me laugh in book 12. But 13 and 14, he had a few shining moments, particularly in the prologue of A Memory of Light. I actually really, really like Talmanes.
Yeah, that was a good scene with Talmanes
Yeah.
in By Grace and Banners Fallen.
Yeah.
But I have one more character I want to talk about before
Okay.
we move on to like a lore,
Cool.
Lore segment here, and that is Varen.
Okay.
That is very much Varen. She just has this prologue scene,
Yeah.
but oh my gosh, is this a bombshell? We see her navigating the currents of the Wise Ones and
Oh,
the Maidens
Christ.
and the Tower
It
Aes
just
Sedai,
happened again.
and the fact that she has now sworn fealty to Rand, and she has to deal with
It
the
just
fallout
happened
of that,
again.
where she has lost
Drew's
the
infant
trust
died.
of other Aes Sedai because they're like, how could you? Like,
You're
you know,
back. Oh, sorry. You were frozen there for like 15 seconds. I thought it happened again.
Oh, jeez.
Did I not freeze at all?
No.
Oh, I was saying Drew. So I must have frozen because you didn't hear me. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Woo! Sorry. Go. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought we had to cancel and start again.
Yeah, I love how she has to be so delicate in this scene to get what she wants out of everybody around her, out of the Wise Ones, out of the Maidens, out of the Tower Aes Sedai, and how she's, utilizing this compulsion weave. And we don't even really see, like, this is some really majestic writing on Robert Jordan's part, where he gives us so much detail in the scene without really giving us any detail. We don't know what Varen's after, even though we get in her head so deeply. Like, it's masterfully done.
Yeah.
So,
Very nice.
Yeah. That said, do you have any other character notes before we go into lore?
Nope. And when we go into lore, really, I've only got one thing to say. Well, I've got one question and then one thing to say. Actually, one idea to put forth. Should I actually start us? Just get me out of the way here.
Yeah.
Okay. My question for you, Drew. Seriously though, okay. What is happening with the power and the way it's acting strange after the Bowl of Winds was used? I think we see it with both Saidin and Saidar.
We do.
Okay.
So just to make it very clear, the weirdness with the power is because of the Bowl of the Winds, not because of Elaine's Gateway. The fact that it's affecting Saidin makes that clear.
Yeah.
What is happening here is that the Bowl of the Winds was pushed way, way, way beyond anything it was supposed to do.
Okay.
And so it became unstable, and there are these like tufts of Saidin and Saidar that were like, I mean, there were huge weaves that it sent out, of course, but there were tufts of it like breaking off of these weaves because it was so unstable and so pushed way beyond its supposed max. And so the one power is now resonating with and against those tufts of Saidin and Saidar floating around. And obviously it's worst where the bowl was used, where most of the power came came down directly.
And the fact that Elaine's, nuclear bomb of a gateway went off, roughly in the same area of the world is probably what's giving rise to a lot of that confusion, eh?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But that is a coincidence.
Okay. And I was going to actually mention earlier, I totally forgot to, about how the Bowl of the Winds just is such an interesting, probably the coolest Tir-Angrial I think we see, in my opinion, in this entire series. I mean, yes, the Shoid and Kal and Kalendor and Sakarnin and all these other ones, they're awesome, but these are Sa-Angrial, and there's obviously Tir-Angrial that grant access to them. But a single Tir-Angrial, no, never mind, the Crystal Columns in Roidion. Those will probably take the cake. Yeah, never mind. I realized what I was doing there.
There's a couple other pretty cool ones.
But just the sheer, I was going to say, the sheer immensity of the power of this thing, but I guess if it was pushed so far beyond its limit, that would explain a lot of this, what's going on there. I like your explanation of there. I totally accept it. I assume, of course, you've done your research, though, and you know what you're talking about, so I have to accept it.
Yes. That is word from Robert Jordan. That's not just my theory.
Okay. And to wrap up my miscellaneous questions, I have an idea to put forth, Drew. I purposefully did not say this during our housekeeping before we started rolling because I wanted to get your reaction to this idea live on air. I'm also starting to wonder if we actually said this before way earlier in the podcast. I'm not, or like in the episodes, I'm not sure. But how about this? This is an idea I had. This is an idea I had actually during the Fires of Heaven, I think. It was that long ago, but I forgot to mention until now. It was a scene with Elaine that inspired me towards this. And I might have some homework for us, if you're down for it. Doesn't need to be finished anytime soon. But somewhere during Elaine's fascination with Matt's language, in Crown of Swords, actually. It doesn't matter. I thought to myself, how funny would it be if we set ourselves to coming up with new Wheel of Time style curses or curse phrases? I thought it was
Wheel of Time style, like...
Yeah, like I'm pretty stoked for it. Like I've already got some written down. I'm still refining a couple. But maybe sometime in the future, before we end our Wheel of Time read, we should bring these to the table, I'm thinking, because as amazing or embarrassing and or both as they may be, I still think it sounds amusing. So does that sound like something you'd want to do?
I guess.
All right. We'll put it down for a tentative yes. Okay. Sorry, and I've done my miscellaneous and my questions out of here, so continue with our lore, my dude.
All right. So I really only have one thing to talk about today, but it's going to be a little hefty.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do to kick this off is we're going to talk about the timeline of events in Abu Dar. At the end of The Crown of Swords, Matt and Birgitta and the Wonder Girls are all meeting with the Sea Folk, arguing over what's going to happen after they get the Bowl of the Winds. That scene happens the same day as the opening events of this book. It is noted in A Crown of Swords, in that scene, that it is just past noon. And
I know where this is going now.
They make their agreement, and Matt goes off to find Oliver because he ran off. And when Matt goes off, he says to his Red Arms, he's like, all right, we're going to go out and make circuits, and we're going to meet back up at the Mulhara. Oh my gosh, I just totally blanked on what the name of the
you're
friggin'
mixing that up
plaza.
with
The plaza in
Mala.
front of
Yeah.
Malhalla. Malhalla. Like,
I made you do it again.
I can't, yeah. Malhara, right? It's the Malhara.
The Mulhara, that's how I pronounce it.
The plaza in front of the Terrazin Palace. Anyway, he says we're going to meet back up here in an hour if we can't find him. And Matt goes off, and he does not come back to the plaza, implying there's less than an hour there.
Okay.
Right? And the Shanshan attack. Now, assuming, and which is what we're given to believe here, Matt leaves that meeting and goes off looking for Oliver, and the rest of them immediately go and head to the plaza and make the gateway to go to the farm.
How do they have time to... Sorry, go... I don't mean... Yeah.
Now, they do that, and the ride is supposed to be about 2 hours to the farm after they get out of the gateway. Rianne Corley says that. But over the course of the ride, there are some weird things where Elaine notes, she's like, the sun is in a weird spot. It seems like it should be lower. Like, and Rianne is like, wow, that seems like that took us way less than 2 hours.
Well, she said that's a bit shy. Like she was like she overestimated the journey. But I didn't think it was by that much. I don't remember Elaine noting anything.
And then
about
they
the
have
position
time
of
to
the
get
sun.
to the farm.
Huh.
Van Dien and Adelius interrogate Ispin. Avienda and Elaine go through the Terangriel and stuff. Then they use the Bowl of the Winds, and then they sense the channeling from Ebudar. And the lightning, they see the lightning on the horizon. Now, remember back in Book 5?
Yes, I knew we were going here. Damn it. No, I don't accept it. Go ahead.
I raised the theory that Avienda might be able to make a gateway that can time travel. There are some major weird things going on in this sequence of events that could be explained away by Avienda having a gateway that time travels.
Okay.
And once again, there is an answer to this. And there are also things like Avienda, when she makes her gateway, she specifically notes how she has to use all of her power to make a gateway that is smaller than the one Elaine can make with much less than all of Elaine's
But that
power.
doesn't mean it's any more than a gateway, because look at Endrol. I mean, he uses way different amounts of the power for way different sized gateways
and
as well.
he has a talent.
Right. Okay.
He should not be able to make a gateway. He's not strong enough in the power to form a gateway.
Yeah, it's with his
But he has a talent, so he can do it.
But, I mean, it's just, I really think you're reaching here, man. Like, I do understand, I do get that there is a huge discrepancy in the amount of time that Matt said he was going to take looking for Oliver. Oliver, Jesus.
And the fact that the sun is in different points in the sky than it should be.
I see that as Jordan setting up what's about to happen, reminding you, yes, the world is in a drought, there's something wrong with the world, the sun has been killing people, has been killing this world, and now the sun is about to be. I think he was just setting that scene for the reader to know, okay, this is going to happen now. We are finally taking care of this
What would the sun
problem.
being in the wrong part of the sky have anything to do
no,
with
you said
that?
strangeness with the sun. Like, the sun may be too bright. I mean, obviously,
No,
if
it's nothing about what the sun looks like. It's all about the sun's position in the sky.
okay.
That's all that's mentioned, is the sun's position in the sky being lower than it should be.
But they didn't use a gateway to leave Ebudar.
Yeah, they did. Avienda wove a gateway from the plaza from the Terrazin Palace north to the hills south of the farm.
So how and
And
when
then
did
she
they see the
unwove
Golem
the gateway.
watching them from the spire?
What?
How and when did they see the Golem watching them from the spire?
The Golem was watching her weave the gateway. She was holding the
I thought
gateway
they were
open while
okay,
everybody was
okay.
filing through.
So
and
they
then
did
she
that-
looked up. And then when everybody was through,
Okay.
she unwove the gateway so there wouldn't be any residue.
Oh, so they wove that gateway from the Mahaman square, right?
It's from the courtyard of the Terrazin Palace.
Yeah. I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Still,
So,
though, there's so much.
I will tell you right now, there is an answer to this.
I know you've been saying that.
And I'm going to hold that off until maybe Towers of Midnight, just because I know Pat wants to talk about Towers of Midnight and some time wonkiness there, too. But
a lot
But
of those
yeah,
points,
there's an answer to this.
I think a lot of those points could be explained with Jordan's use of the unreliable narrator, though. I mean, if Matt didn't find Oliver, like, maybe he didn't go back to the palace. I mean, I assume that he would have after that hour is done. And you're absolutely right in pointing out that discrepancy. Matt said, we'll be back here, we'll meet here in an hour, and the fact that he hadn't yet returned by the end of A Crown of Swords means that there was probably less than an hour between the time that they departed in search of Oliver and the Shan attacked. I agree with that. And also how it's really, really weird how they managed to do a 2-hour journey, or something like it.
And interrogate a prisoner, and
use
check out the Terangrial, and use the Bowl of the Winds.
In the time it took the Shan to attack there. I get that. And we have seen temporal disturbances. Oh, actually, I'm not going to spoil the future of the series here. Maybe we should censor that out. I don't know. But it's not the only time that Jordan plays with time, I guess. And he is a renowned physicist in his own right. But I think in this case, a lot of what you're basing your assumptions on could be also explained by an unreliable narrator.
So I want to clear something up here. I am not making any assumptions here. This is the popular fan theory. This is not my theory. I am relaying
I have
information.
never heard this theory until you brought it up in Fires of Heaven Part 2, I think it was. I had never even heard it. Anybody who's listening can go back and listen to my reaction when you brought up time traveling gateways. I was like, wait, what? I was flabbergasted by that.
Yeah. This is not something I came up with. This is something that was discussed on like the Theoryland boards and Dragon Mount and
wouldn't somebody have pinned Robert Jordan down on a definitive... Oh, wait, you said that there is an answer. Sorry. You said there is an answer.
Somebody actually asked Robert Jordan about this specific scene, and he smiled and said Raffo.
I think he smiled and went, oh, in his own head, he went, oh, crap, I gotta fix something here. It's just me being pessimistic, I suppose.
I knew this would, be a little more involved with a lore thing, because this is such a crazy out there theory. But and I wanted to bring this theory because it's a lot of fun. Like, it's fun to debate. I mean, there are. Whoa, what?
I just got an epic idea. How about some point in the future we come and bring forth our the most ridiculous theories that we've heard touted about the Wheel of Time? That would be cool, right? I just wanted to get that out of the way before I totally forgot it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I immediately know what the most ridiculous one I've ever heard was.
Same here.
Because it was so dumb and so wrong. It was like the guy who came up with it just completely read the books wrong. Completely missed, like, the entire ending of 2 of the first 3 books. Wow. But yeah, so that's something, if people want to hop on our post on Facebook and discuss away, I'll throw a little more oil onto that fire.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what people think about that and dig into that a little more.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but so beyond that, do you have any kind of concluding thoughts for this portion of Path of Daggers?
No, I probably will at the end of the Path of Daggers, but for now, I'm just sitting here gearing up for the final draft, my man.
Okay. All right, let's dive into the final draft then.
Okay. All right, I'll get it started then. So, for my final draft entry for today, I mean, it's different from any other entry I've had before. And what makes it different is that each time before, I have been in the supermarket on a Sunday, right before we record the podcast, and I'm looking for an appropriate beer for that day's episode. I'm usually keeping in mind what I've just read. I'm looking at phrases, I'm looking at words, subject matter, and I'm reading through the names of all the brews to find an interesting or amusing connection that I can make. This beer, however, caught my eye in the local liquor store about 6 months ago, before we had even started the Wheel of Time read-through. I read the name of this beer. Like, we had already started the podcast, but we hadn't reached the Wheel of Time yet. So I read the name of this beer, and I thought, that's a good one. I need to bring that one on for Path of Daggers.
Okay.
So I wrote it down, and 6 months later, here I have it. This here is a Belgian-styled wheat beer, which describes itself as a, and I quote, thirst-quenching, light-bodied farmhouse ale with complex, earthy, and citrus notes. I didn't get the earthy, but I definitely, since we're drinking a beer, no surprise, I got the citrus. Definitely. Okay. Orange zest, Saaz hops. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Saaz. S-A-A-Z.
Saaz hops?
Is it Saaz hops? Okay, Saaz hops. Apparently a bit of spice. I'm going to guess it's actually allspice. Listed on the can.
Usually those like Belgian styles will have like coriander or something like that in them.
Interesting. And I'll show you the can right now, my man. This here is a brew from Black Oak Brewing Company. And keeping in mind what's happened right as we started our read-through on this book with Elaine and Nynaeve and all of our mutual parties with the Athan Mier, and we have the kinswomen, getting the chance to use the Bowl of the Winds and finally reverse this endless summer drought that the Dark One has imprisoned the world in. This one is called Beat the Heat.
That is fantastic.
Right? I thought it was pretty good. I saw that and I was like, Bowl of the Winds. Got her.
That is really good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice.
What are you bringing?
So today, I'm doing something a little different. This is a first for the podcast, in fact. So my beer is not specifically themed for the Path of Daggers, but it is themed for the Wheel of Time.
Okay.
More importantly, this beer was sent to me by a listener of Inking Out Loud.
What?
And
really?
I want to give him a shout out.
Give him that shout out.
He is one of our newest Patreon supporters,
No,
Sean Harriet.
Sean Harriet.
Thank you so much for sending me this beer.
Awesome.
I'll tell you, it was very tasty. So this is a stout from Pawley's Island Brewing Company. And I think this is, North Charleston, South Carolina. So
really?
Right near Robert Jordan.
Yep. I recognized it.
This is very bitter, roasty kind of stout.
Right.
Not super, like, not a whole ton of chocolate. A little bit of caramel in the finish, but mostly like a really, really bitter, roasty stout. It is 7.2%, so not like crazy heavy either. But this is called Gray Man.
Oh, come on. Are you kidding me? Really? That's
Yep.
cool. I like that. Sean Harriet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
And welcome.
That was something I was very excited to have. And so, to any of our listeners, if you have like a crazy local beer that doesn't get distributed or something, and you think it'll be great for a book that we might cover in the future, or a Wheel of Time book, since we'll be covering those, feel free to reach out to me. I'll make a little beer swap with you.
Yeah, can't do it with me because I'm across the border. I'm international, yo.
Yeah, well.
But I bet you Drew would be on that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I sent Sean a couple of examples of fine Colorado craft beer that you can't really get outside of the brewery. So this was a great little swap that I think worked out nicely.
Sweet.
Yeah. So that said, this has been episode 49 of the Inking Out Loud podcast. And next up, we are going to be doing something a little different and a little special for our 50th episode.
Yeah.
We're planning on doing a live stream, and we're going to do a little discussion about how 2019 went, some of our favorites and least favorites of this year, and maybe a couple of other little games. So keep an eye out on our Facebook page for more details about that in the coming week. And in the meantime, check us out on Patreon, like that awesome guy Sean. Patreon.com/InkingOutLoud. You can get access to our monthly newsletter, early access to episodes, access to some of our short episodes covering like novellas and short stories and miscellaneous topics like the Wheel of Time TV show. And as always, thank you for joining us. I am your host, Drew McCaffrey.
And I'm Rob Santos, everyone.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.